All right, what's going on, guys? So today, what I'm going to go over is the lab activity that I gave you, air masses in fronts. This is what I'm giving you guys. This is basically the wrap up of weather before we go on to a little bit of greenhouse gases, Earth climate change, okay? And then we're going to start getting into astronomy, all right? All right, so for the first part of the lab, basically it's just definitions that you can get from the notes on Google Classroom. But then what they give you is they basically give you where you can cut out the pages. I'm not expecting you guys to. You guys can just draw your own drawings. But we're going to go through what some of those are going to look like. So for the first one that they're asking for is a cold front. All right. So your box at the top is going to say cold front. And then it's giving you three things. First, it's giving you the profile, the side profile. So the same as topographic maps. You're looking at the side thing, okay? So since we're dealing with the cold front interacting with the warm front, what you're going to do is, and you can also see it on the last page where they give you a bunch of different diagrams. You can basically just draw cold front, basically cold air coming in, all right? And it's going to hit warm air, all right? Now, since it's a cold front, the cold air always wants to go below the warm front, okay? Cold air is more dense, all right? We're always talking about density. So the cold air is going to want to go underneath this warm air. And because of that, it's going to create the warm air to rise really quick. So that warm air is rising, and what we know about rising is as that warm air is rising, it's going to create those clouds, all right? And eventually those clouds are going to cause precipitation. All right? Because remember, cold air always is more dense than warm air. That's why your air conditioners are always high up in rooms, because cold air is always dropping. If it was at the ground, an air conditioner unit, the cold air would just stay at the bottom and only your feet would get cool, but the rest of your body would still be warm. All right. Also think about it. If you ever jump into a pool, the further down you go, the colder it gets. And that's the same in the ocean. Okay. Cold air is always going to be, or cold water, cold air, it's always going below the warm air or the warm water. So that's the first part with your diagram. Now it's also asking you to give a symbol. And you have a symbol box. So basically all you're doing is you're going to make a line, and then you're going to see what the symbol is, and you can use your Earth Science reference table or the notes. And for a cold front, it looks like those little icicles. So it's triangles, and basically those icicles or those arrows is pointing in the way that the cold front is actually traveling. So the cold front is actually moving this way. Now, what happens? So the first thing, when a cold front is coming in, is to understand that that's cold air. So if a cold front goes over you, the first thing is there's going to be a drop in temperature. That's the first thing, because you got that cold air moving in. You're no longer in that warm front area. Now, the other thing is, since the warm air is going up so fast, it's forming those clouds, and now it's going to rain. So it's going to be really heavy rain or precipitation. So those are two of the things. Now, the third thing is, which is really important, is that with the cold front coming in and pushing that warm air up really fast, sometimes you get really heavy precipitation, and this is where you sometimes get or causes your thunderstorms, thunder and lightning. Okay, so that's for the cold front. That's for the first part. And again, if I'm going a little too fast or if you have any questions, put it in the comments or you can email me. I'm going to keep this up for a second so you can pause it and before we go to our warm front. All right. Okay, so now we're going to go to the warm front. Now, the warm front, we're going to have the warm air coming in. So, draw the arrow, got warm air. And we have cold air hanging out over here. Now, since that warm air is coming in, it's going to hit the cold front or the cold air. And remember, the cold air always wants to be below. So what happens is the warm air is going to start rising up like this. And while it does that, this is basically our box for the cold air. And this is our basically a little bit longer with the warm air. All right. And I'm going to draw this with red so you guys understand that this is warm air going up. Now, since the warm air is a little different than when we were with the cold front. Remember, with the cold front coming in, it pushes the warm air really fast. Instead, what's happening is the warm air is going up at an angle. It's going up a little bit slower, a lot slower than when a cold front comes in and just pushes that warm air up right away. So since it does that, the warm air is cooling at a slower rate than just getting thrown up into the atmosphere. So because of that, you get clouds that are forming a little bit more spread out. So since they're spread out, they're not all going to be condensed in the same area. Whereas with the cold front, you get heavy rain. So what happens with the warm front is basically you get a gentle rain. Or if it's happening in the wintertime and if it's still really cold, you get a light snow. Okay? Now, the other thing is, since you have a warm front coming in, it's going to be basically followed. So if you live right here, and you're in that cold air, and now that warm front comes in and slowly starts pushing that cold air away, you're going to have warmer or milder weather. So it comes up, it spreads out a little bit more. So basically it's raining all over the place, but it's a lot lighter than if a cold front came in and just pushed all that warm air right up. Now the symbol, and I'm going to use red because if you ever watch the Weather Channel, they usually always use red with their diagrams. You have your line, meaning that it's a front, and they do these half circles. I always think of them as half of the sun, okay? And those half circles are just like the triangles that are used with the cold front. They're showing you which way the air mass is going. So that's for a warm front. And then if you wanted to also, you just put lighter rain coming down. And it's a little different than a cold front because remember, a cold front, once it hits that warm air, it makes that warm air rise up really fast. And the heavy precipitation's happening right in front of the cold front. Whereas a warm front, it goes in front of the line, okay? Because you have it right here. This is basically your line where it hits contact, but the rain is happening in front, or precipitation, depending on what the weather is like outside. Okay. So now I'm going to erase this. So the next one they ask us is a stationary front. So a stationary front now, you have two air masses that are moving at opposite directions and they're crashing into each other, right? So we got two of them right here. Crashing in. Now, it doesn't matter which side you use, but I'm going to keep my cold air on this side, and then I'm going to put warm air over here. Now, since they crash into each other, the warm air is still going to rise up to the top. Okay, so it goes up, and now you get your cloud formation. So that's basically what's happening. It's crashing into each other. The warm air is going to go up. The cold air is going to go down, and it basically just stays. It's stationary. Think of like when you're, if you ever go to the gym, those stationary bikes, they don't go anywhere. All right, you can pedal them as much as you want, but they're not moving either which way because they're crashing into each other. They can only go up. Also, another way to think about it is with plate tectonics, those are our converging plates. All right, they crash into each other and they can only go up, which are forming those mountains. So they crash into each other. So basically what happens here? So what happens is you can either have light or heavy precipitation. Now, the other thing is, now we got to look at the symbol. So I'm going to do the symbol exactly how I see it on this board. So they're going right at each other. So I'm actually going to make a straight line. So the cold air is going this way. So for that, I'm going to put my triangles heading in that direction. Now the warm air is going to the left of the board. So I'm going to put my half circles on this side. So this is showing that my warm air is going this way and that my cold air is going to the right. Okay? So that's a stationary front. Now the last one, before I erase this just in case if you guys pause on this, I want to give you guys enough time, is our occluded front. So for this one, we have our occluded front. Now we're going to have two air masses basically catching up to each other. Okay? So we have our cold air, and then, or basically colder air. We have cold air over here, and then we have our warm air at the top. And it kind of does this weird pattern like this, all right? Because we got this cold air coming in. We also have this warm air, but the warm air is still going to be above the cold air because it's less dense, all right? And because of that, since they're forming, you're going to have your cloud formation up top. So the symbol that's happening is, I'm going to put a straight line again because the cold air is going this way, is you're going to have your cold air heading this way, but you're also going to have your half circles traveling the same way. So this shows that the warm air in the cold air are moving in the same direction. So what happens during this? So what happens is that it can bring strong winds and heavy precipitation. And remember, precipitation could be anything. It could be rain, snow, hail, sleet. Because the cold air basically catches up to the warm front and it moves together, and then that warm air goes, and then you get that cold air because they're mixing and they're all going this way. All right. So that was basically all I wanted to go on, is the 4 different types of fronts. Now, I understand if you don't have a printer at home, again, you don't have to cut these out, but you can use these to basically map out how I drew them on the board. Okay. Because you'll notice that this is the warmer air. Basically, that's up top. You have your colder air coming in, and then you have your cold air just kind of hanging out. And if you're able to cut them out and actually fit them together, you would get a pattern that kind of looks like this. And then also in the diagrams on yours where I did, you just put your symbol and what happens. So I want you guys to really work on that. Make sure your diagrams kind of look how mine do. And then when you're done with that, I want you guys to attempt to go over these questions on the back. And we will go over them tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We'll go back to normal time. Okay? I'll see you guys later. Stay safe.